Hi everyone, over the past couple of weeks I've come up with a build on patch 2.3's PTR, using a build that's around Lightning Frenzy and Hammer of the Ancients. I found this build to be really effective in Torment 10, and even capable of doing greater rifts in the lower 60s. To give you an example, I've done a greater rift 58 run here with no pylons being used in the process. I'll give you a rundown of how the build works, and some of the items that you'll need to make this build effective. The objective of this build is to use Frenzy to keep your attack speed at maximum, while using Hammer of the Ancients to keep up abilities such as Wrath of the Berserker, Call of the Ancients, and using buffs like Taiguk and Focus Restraint. While Hammer of the Ancients damage is very powerful, Frenzy's damage is a close contender due to the lightning procs from weapons such as Shard of Hate, Fulminator, Odin's Son, and Thunder Fury Blessed Blade of the Windseeker. Initially, these procs would probably not do enough damage if it wasn't for Focus and Restraint's damage bonus, as well as Immortal King's now doing 250% damage, while both Wrath of the Berserker and Call of the Ancients are active. That about sums it up for playstyle. Now let's talk gear. As stated before, Immortal King's got its damage increased from 100% to 250% in this latest patch. Keeping this buff up is a must, and thanks to the Immortal King's 4-set bonus, you can use Hammer of the Ancients to knock the cooldown off in no time. You'll be using every piece from the Immortal King setup apart from the Boulder Breaker to make this work. Next, you'll be using the two rings, Focus and Restraint, to give yourself an additional 100% damage. Using Frenzy takes care of the first 50%, while Hammer of the Ancients takes care of the other 50%. The buff from these rings will scarcely fall off, with the exception of downtime between packs. For amulets, your best options are Hellfire, Maras, or Zephyrian. For this patch, we get a new pair of shoulders called Fury of the Ancients. Call of the Ancients gains the effect of the Ancients' Fury rune, so Call of the Ancients will give you Fury every time they attack an enemy. These are very exceptional shoulders for instances where you might die, but have Call of the Ancients active when you resurrect. You can send them in to get the Fury for you, and use Hammer of the Ancients to reset the cooldown on your Wrath of the Berserker. Another item we got this patch is Bracers of the First Men, which will fill your last armor slot. These bracers are the reason why Hammer of the Ancients becomes so powerful, giving them a 50% increased attack speed, as well as increasing your damage by up to 200%. As you can see, these ones are very close. Finally, we come to our weapons. There are a few options here, but I find the three best choices are Fulminator, Shard of Hate, and Thunder Fury Blessed Blade of the Windseeker. Due to their immense attack speed compared to the other ones, this one will allow you to attack faster and get more strikes off. As Shard of Hate and Thunder Fury have great procs on their own, Fulminator is great for groups, as I find the conduit effect is especially useful on multiple mobs. You'll notice that my Fulminator also has life per hit on it. Due to how fast I attack, I find this is the best source of health recovery that I can have for this build. Two more notable weapons I would suggest for this build are Sky Splitter and Odin's Son. Now let's quickly go over the abilities and passives you'll use for this build. First up, we have Call of the Ancients together as one. This lightning rune will take 50% of the damage taken and redirect it to your Ancients. Even with them taking this much damage, I've very rarely seen them die. Up next we have Warcry Veteran's Warning. This got buffed recently, as the dodge chance is now 30%, making this even better than Impunity in some cases. Between this and Wrath of the Berserker, I find that you almost always have a 50% chance to dodge, and I find that's better than just a little extra to your resistances. Up next we have Battle Rage Bloodshed, because damage. And speaking of damage, we have Wrath of the Berserker Insanity. Obviously we're going to choose this rune because it does provide the best damage increase. Thrive on Chaos was one I tried before, just for the life per fury spent, but I found the survival was only good for when I used Hammer of the Ancients, and not Frenzy. Finally, we get to our two main abilities. Our first one is Frenzy with Smite. We're going lightning here because we want to trigger the effects on the lightning weapons that we chose. Frenzy is very strong for how much attack speed it gains, and it'll even be more so when I explain the new changes that they made with the Kanai's Cube in 2.3. This rune has a 30% chance to stun the mob for 1.5 seconds. It does happen really frequently if you notice the small lightning arcs coming above my targets. Our second ability is Hammer of the Ancients Thunderstrike. Upon killing a mob with this attack, the area will get stunned for 2 seconds. Now CC diminishing returns have become a bit harsher with this patch. However, I don't find I'm taking too long to kill these mobs, so it's not so much of an issue. However, this will probably become more trivial as the rifts increase. Now for a quick look at our passives. 3 of them are damage dealers, including Rampage, Ruthless, and Berserker Rage. I'm almost always at maximum fury, so that damage is usually intact. Lastly, we use Nerves of Steel for survival. Another good option here would be Relentless. I imagine you could probably use that on your Hellfire Amulet, or as a passive to string in with the other ones I mentioned. Continuing on, we now have the 3 legendary gems to talk about. After some swapping, I've found these to be the 3 most powerful ones to use. Our first one is Bane of the Trapped. Because the passive from this is almost always active, as we're constantly in the face of our enemy, I find this one was great for the damage multiplier. Taiguk is another really good one, as you'll find Hammer of the Ancient or even Battle Rage can be used in cycle to keep the stacks going. Lastly, we have Pain Enhancer. The damage bleed from this one is actually quite strong. And on top of that, as long as you've got multiple enemies nearby you, your attack speed will increase, furthering your damage as well as increasing your healing return. A few other options I would suggest trying out is Simplicity Strength for restoration purposes, Bane of the Stricken due to how many attacks you get per second, and Gogok Swiftness for a guaranteed increased attack speed. At first I thought the cooldown was really nice on this one as well, but I also find I don't actually need it. Lastly, we'll look at Kanai's Cube. This addition to patch 2.3 allows you to extract a legendary power from one armor, weapon, and jewelry slot. I'll quickly go over some of my preferences, and then throw in a few exceptions as well. First off, we have Bastion's Revered. This allows to stack Frenzy up to 10 times. At first, this doesn't seem to be a very important weapon to choose, as some would probably choose the Furnace over it. But that's when I pair it with the Undisputed Champion to give Frenzy every single rune. Now you get increased Fury, movement speed, 25% damage as long as you're at max stacks, and you get a sidearm, which gives you additional damage. For our jewelry slot, we use Convention of Elements. The damage on this when it shifts to lightning is bar none, and I love that it also gives me extra damage when it rolls to physical thanks to Pain Enhancer's bleed effect. Some good runner-ups would be the Furnace for your weapon slot, Depth Diggers for your armor slot, and Unity for a defense bonus. At this point, I have reached the Rift Guardian, which will take roughly 1.5 minutes to take him down. If I had Bane of the Stricken equipped, I probably could take him down in half the time, but I find I need the damage more so to the Greater Rift rather than the Rift Guardian. That about wraps it up for this video. As time goes on, I will try to make updates, as I would love to push this into the higher Greater Rifts. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to put them into the section below, and I will try to get to them when I can. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.
returning to town.